So, hello everybody. Today I am with Fiona Maguire and she works with energy. She's an amazing person that I've been so glad to get to know, and I thought she'd make a perfect interviewee for the Vibrant community. And so I'm going to hand straight over to Fiona. I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you about what she does. Hi.
Okay, thanks very much, Sarah, for that. Good morning, good to see you. So I'm somebody that absolutely loves to break people free from what's holding them back so they can reach their full potential and they can be who they truly are in the world. As a highly sensitive person myself and as an empath, I know what it's like to feel that, the world is tugging against you and everything can affect you. But really, when you stand in the truth of who you are and the conscious being that you are, and you actually use your sensitivity as the gift that is yours to use, then you can really be more of yourself and you can thrive in the world. So I help people really see who they are and really work with that and break free from what was ever holding them back in the first place. So a lot of people come to me that are in pain. Maybe it's mental pain or emotional pain or physical pain, and nothing else has worked. And the way that I work with them breaks them free of that a lot quicker than anything else would have done before.
And I'm sure people are going to be going, brilliant. And how do you do that? How is it you are able to do that?
It's really funny because I've been doing it all my life. I've been reading energy all my life. So when I was a child, I was just like, well, everybody can do this. And, it took me until I was about at least 13 until I realized that most people didn't even feel their own feelings, let alone what was going on for somebody else. But I never understood why people felt one way to me and behaved in a different way. And then when I asked them, when I questioned them about what they were feeling, they'd be like, how does she know? Or they'd be like, I'm not angry. And I'm like, really? So yeah, it was an interesting childhood, but I've studied it. The funniest thing is I've studied science and religion and philosophy to kind of prove what I can already do myself, to prove it to me, to make it valid. And now I'm actually teaching people how to directly tap into that themselves. So it's about grounding. It's about really being in your body and just opening up to your own intuition, to your own sense of being that is beyond the normal senses and kind of just opens you up into another way of being in the world, which is, in my opinion, more the truth of who you actually are.
And what I found really interesting is that you do have that scientific, professional, therapeutic background as well, don't you?
Yeah, my degree is in psychology. I worked as an assistant psychologist in a psychiatric unit for children. And I used to help write programs for the children and deliver them. And also the interesting thing about this job was it was a shift job. So sometimes the nurses were in charge of me and I was just with the young people, as we called them in those days, between the ages of 11 and 19. And we were just hanging out, eating, playing, as well as doing the therapy work. And what I found that really brought them on more than anything was just being with them the way that they are and just accepting them and just really being present with them. And then they would just open up. And, more therapy got done playing football than any other time in the office.
And you decided, didn't you, from what you saw, that you were going to move on from that almost the traditional and the stereotyped and to some extent straight-jacketed therapeutic intervention approach wasn't what was actually working.
Yeah, in my experience, getting people to keep talking about what's going on for them just kind of re-traumatizes at worst, or at least keeps them identified with what's wrong with them rather than them connecting with what's right with them, who they already truly are. And then if you work on only one level, psychology works on the psyche, which is meant to mean the soul, but it's not. It's moved to mental illness, like what's wrong with this person, what can we label them, what do we know about their illness. It's moved away from the innate health it was meant to be about to what's wrong, mental illness. And I burnt out, to be honest. I was young, I was enthusiastic, and I just felt a lot for the young people that I worked with. So I burnt out, I became a physical therapist, but people kept coming to me asking me for counselling. So eventually I gave in, but I was determined not to counsel them in the way that I'd been taught. I started to talk to them about, well, not energy, because it was a bit do-do-do-do back then. I started to talk to them about what they feel in their body, like what made them feel alive, what brought them happiness, what brought them joy. And I taught them how to relate deeply with their own body and their own intuition. And one of the first guys, he was a compulsive gambler. He, had been bankrupt and everything else. He'd been gambling his whole life. And I can't remember how long it took, but he gave up gambling. He just stopped. He just opened his mind to so many more things that was happening. And this one woman came to me with an illness, and she came for massage, but she kept wanting counselling. And I can't even remember what the illness was now. It was over 21 years ago. But I just worked with her in the way that I did, and she got better. And but I still wasn't ready to go out and speak about it, because I wasn't working with one thing. I was working with everything all at once. And I hadn't met anyone at that time that was working even remotely the way that I was. And now I've met people, but nobody's bringing everything together. No one's bringing the psychology, the emotions, the physical body, the energy, the spirituality. No one's bringing it all together, coaching and everything. So the reason why I call myself a coach is because basically I'm allowed to work the way I want if I'm a coach. I don't have to stick to any doctorate. Of course, I bring in a lot of psychology knowledge because it's useful. But I'm not labeling, and I'm not trying to fix people. I'm trying to find out what's their innate being and bring that out, because that fulfills you. Being who you truly are in the world is what everybody wants.
Yeah, amen to that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And now you do talk about it, don't you? So you are out in the world, and what kind of reaction do you get?
I've been out in the world for 11 and a half years as an energy therapist, and the reaction has really changed. So I remember before, when I first decided to come out, I was like, I can read your energy, and that would freak people out. So it took me a while to realize that was causing separation rather than bringing us together. So now I'm just with people, and then at some point in the conversation I say something and they're like, how do you know that? Or what do you mean by that? And then I'll talk to them, and I'll get them to see it themselves, to have real insight in, to see themselves, real insight, sight from within. And then they're like, oh, this is different. What is this called? And then I label it. But now, the word energy is, people are not as freaked out by it as they were. But when I was advertising myself as an energy worker, people were saying, do you do Reiki? Do you do reflexology? And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But what I do is much more than that. And I can do it wherever people are. I've got clients in New Zealand, Australia, America.
And you're in Portugal, aren't you?
At the moment, I'm in Portugal, living in a beautiful national park with my dog, who's lying at my feet right now.
But I know you do quite a lot of work here in the UK as well, don't you?
Yes, and that might even be shifting now. I might actually be more based in the UK than I am in Portugal.
So I found you via one of your videos, and I was really fascinated to hear what you were talking about. And I think probably, whilst I've always looked in this direction, maybe a few years ago, I would not have been open. I would have been open, but not as open to exploring and discovering. And I was really curious to find out about, okay, what is it that you see and how do you do that? And you and I had this great conversation about the fact that you see energy, and I got really fascinated by that. and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Why can't I see energy? But you had some really interesting things to say about it, and I love the fact that you're so relaxed about it, and you're trying not to turn anything into permanent or solid form, because that just doesn't serve anybody. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Speak to not turning anything to
Yeah, so
solid.
seeing energy, but you don't see it as being a huge deal.
Yeah, I used to think that was because I'd just been doing it all my life. And you know what it's like when you've been doing something all your life, it's closer than close. It's just natural. But everybody has an intuition. You know, every mother knows what their kid's doing, even if their kid's at school. You just have this sense, you know what they're feeling, right? Because you're a mother, I'm not a mother. But I am a child psychologist. So, you know, I just know that mothers and fathers, that they know what their children are doing. You know, everybody, they walk into a room and they just know what the atmosphere is. You know, you meet a friend for coffee and you go in and you're like, yeah, you can't wait to meet them. And then at the end of the meeting, you're suddenly like, wow, I don't feel good at all. And they was a bit miserable to begin with, but now they're really happy. And then everyone says, oh, they took my energy. So it's really funny how people use the word energy all the time. And people know that they're intuitive and they know that they can rely on that. And in some of their areas of their life, like their children, like planning holidays, you know, they just trust their intuition to come on board and do what it needs to do. And then in other areas of their life, they're like, oh no, work's too serious to believe in my intuition, you know. Oh. But you look at Richard Branson and Lord Sugar, you know, they say they only make massive business decisions if their heart says yes. You know, even if the numbers don't stack up, they're still investing it because their heart, their intuition, their sixth sense, it's just like, this is the right thing to do. This is the next step.
Yeah.
So it's bandied around all the time, but nobody takes it seriously.
Well, that's interesting that we've gone down that direction, because you made me think that it's quite well known in at work and in professional training that happens, that we call people, they're either radiators or they're drains, in terms of whether they are somebody who appears to come into a room and radiate energy, or they're somebody who comes into your room and they drain your energy. And so that actually, as a concept, is, I would say, pretty well accepted. And I think I'm going to link that to the next thing. I've had various people who have realized that they are very highly sensitive to energy, so they can feel energy, and they do feel sometimes at the behest of people who raid their energy, and they feel a need to protect themselves. So sometimes they'll withdraw, you know, they won't go to social events where there's lots of energy around them, or they can't be with certain people for very long because they feel that they drain their energy, and they either withdraw or they're looking for mechanisms to protect. And you have a very clear I guess vein of advice, a way of seeing this that I think really helps people. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so I understand the reason why people need to withdraw. Like when I was younger, I was a photographer. That was my first business. And I'd go into London, I'd literally get off the train and throw up. And then I'd do my work. And then, you know, before I got back on the train, I'd throw up again. And then I'd go home and I'd be fine. I'd go back to the country. So I understand what it's like to be sensitive and be overwhelmed by energy, you know, and I just took that as a given that was going to happen. But what I also noticed is that if I tried to protect myself from energy, then it was like I was an alien. Like people couldn't relate to me. And I didn't get the warm response that I was used to getting off people. Suddenly, like they were cold or there was a distance between us. And what I realized is that protecting your energy, however you choose to do that, that's creating a barrier between you and the other person. And that barrier is felt by them, at least, or at most. It literally cuts off your energy from radiating out to that person. Now, energy exchange is a natural, normal thing. You know, we all say, oh, I really like that person's vibe. Or, you know, like you say, they walk into a room, they just radiate. But if you're protecting yourself and people can't feel you, so they think you're cold or distant and they don't want to create a relationship with you. So what happens then is that you need to protect yourself even more because you don't feel the warmth coming from them or you don't feel accepted by them.
Yeah. So what can they do instead if people feel like that? If they feel like I'm not sure that many people are really conscious of what's going on for them around this, but some are definitely that I've spoken to. But if not protect yourself, what do you do instead?
So what I'm going to say might sound as if I'm attacking people, and I'm really not. So this is really said with love and 45 years experience of doing what I'm doing. Like I said, energy exchange is natural, it happens. And the reason why mums know what their children are doing, and the reason why you have a sense of your pet or your loved one, is because when you think of them, your energy literally goes out to them. You know, this has been tested. This is science now. You know, our energy literally leaves and goes out and feels what's going on for them and then comes back to us. You know, when we energy exchange, at the moment, some of our literal particles of ourselves are going in and out of each other's bodies. That is science. That is actually happening. So the only way somebody can drain your energy is if you actually literally go out and you meet them, which you're going to do if you're a highly sensitive person. You know, some of your energy is going to go out and flow into them. That's natural. But then you're trying to help them do something. So your energy will stay there, trying to help them do something. And as soon as your energy is left and gone into them, they have permission to come into you. And then it's actually, they're not taking energy from you. They're actually putting some of their energy in you. You're putting some of your energy in them. And then you're both holding on to it. Where if you bring back your energy from them and you ground yourself and you make, you clean your energy, then you're just there. You can still feel the other person because you're still open, but you're not jumping into their space, which gives them permission to jump into yours. If they jump into yours first, then you just know that and you're like, thanks very much, I'll give you back your energy. And you don't have to verbally do it. That there's a nice, clean, simple process. And then you're clean. They're in their energy field. You're in your energy field. You're still exchanging, but you're not doing it in the kind of, the jumping into each other's energy field and taking energy.
Well, you've got to ask. You said that there's a nice, simple exercise that people can do to clean their energy. What would you recommend that they do in that situation? I mean, obviously, if they want to know full whistles and bells, they've got to work with you. But for the purpose of this.
Well, if people go onto my website, realenergy4all.com, they can sign up to my emails and they can get 4 audios which talk about the awareness and grounding, and even give the grounding exercise. And grounding is not the way I teach grounding. It's not just connecting to the ground, which obviously is incredibly important, as the name suggests. I mean, it's literally getting in touch with your own body, being really in touch with every part of your body as a whole body, not, a hand, an arm, a head, but all of you as a whole. And then when you've opened up into that space, which feels incredibly empowering, you will then become aware of energy actually that comes from the ground into you. And if that doesn't happen in that moment, then you purposely become aware of allowing some of your energy to go deep down into the core of the earth, which is very important. And then you'll feel energy from the earth come up into you. And what this does is it brings an extra sense of awareness. You know what you're feeling, you know what's going on for you. And then when you know that, when you know what you're feeling, when you know what's going on for you, if other people's energy comes into you or your energy goes out to someone else, you know straight away. So grounding is incredibly important. And, you know, on my YouTube channel and on my blog posts, I give away a lot of the energy exercises because I really want to empower people. I'm not about, oh, you know, you've got to stick with me, you've got to follow me, I want you to be my client forever. I don't. I really want you doing your thing in the world as you and bringing your lightness and your love into the world, because you can then attract so many more people to you and affect so many more people in a beneficial way. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it ironic that a lot of people will say, so I have a really tangible example of someone saying to me yesterday, you know, they'd had a period of being really down, and a lot of things had got on top of them, and, you know, the world is a bit of a mess and the media is always reporting bad news, and it felt like the world was closing in on them a little bit, and their feeling was, look, I want to be able to go out there and make a difference. I want to be able to make the world a better place. And I sat there with them and I said, you know, what I now see is that, as simple as this is, I'm not sure I completely got it. And I don't think a lot of other people get it, which is that you can't give what you don't have. So if you're coming from that place of feeling despondent and desperate and sad, that is where your energy is, and that is what you're going to project out into the world. And so the way to go out there and make a difference is to first go in here and make a difference. And whilst I think in our culture a lot of people see attention to self as selfishness, we're not saying attention to ego, aggrandizement of ego. We're talking about care of true self, and it might even be discovering true self so that you can give it care. And then your energy will be in a place where you can go into the world. All you can do is be you and be light and be love. And you can't make the world a lighter, more loving or lovelier place if that isn't where you're coming from. You can't give what you don't have. I don't know whether that resonates with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the person you're describing, it sounds like they're a highly sensitive person. Like
Yeah.
things are getting on top of them, things are bringing them down. You know, they look at the news and they just see the doom and gloom. And the thing is, with highly sensitive people, and it's quite funny that I didn't label myself as that or an empath. You know, I just thought it was natural and normal that everyone read energy. So I wasn't interested. And when I studied psychology, this, you know, highly sensitive people and empaths wasn't in the psychology books. Apparently now they are. Apparently they're in the diagnostic manual for psychology. And so a highly sensitive person is somebody that has a very active arousal system, which means that, you know, everyone's got an arousal system. An arousal system is the point at which you become aroused, which can be in a good way, you know, lots of positive energy, or, you know, your stress response gets aroused, you get stressed. With highly sensitive people, because it's so sensitive, they actually get aroused a lot quicker, and they feel joy and happiness, and, you know, the world's amazing much quicker than other people. But they also feel, oh my God, run for the hills, quick, we're in trouble, quicker than other people. So by actually realizing that and realizing that that's normal for you, that's the way your brain is wired. So therefore, it's actually much more important that you spend time doing things that fill you up, like grounding, like being in nature. Hence why I live in a beautiful national park, because it just fulfills me. I know that nature's me and I'm nature, and I've always known that. And I've had a dog whenever it's been possible in my life, because the dog's just in the moment being itself. And I have a highly sensitive dog because I rescued her. But what I've taught her that things are okay. And how I've taught her that things are okay is that whenever she freaks out, I just ground, and I make sure my energy stays with me, and I just stay where I am. And then inevitably she just calms and she bees in that energy, and then she grounds herself, and then she shakes, and then she's playing again. So we can do this. The grounding, the reconnecting to who we are is what is most important. And then from that place, we can go out and we can make change. And the change can happen very, very quickly inside of us, and the change we create in the world. Because as soon as you're more calm in you, that's the energy that you're giving off to the people around you. So they're going to be calmer. So for me, yeah, I did stop watching news for a long time. I don't have a TV. I have no interest in a TV whatsoever, because it is manipulation in my opinion. But there's nothing against it. I just don't want to spend my time like that. But the reason why I did stop listening to the news, I think about 20 years ago, was because it was affecting me. It was bringing me down. Where now I do listen to the news, and Brexit has been a big kick up the arse. And in terms of, let's pay attention to politics, let's pay attention to what's happening, because only then can I do something about it. But you're absolutely right. We need to start with ourselves first. And it's amazing how quickly that can happen if you're just aware of what's going on inside of you.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I really recognise what you're saying, and what struck me as you were talking about TV and the news is social media and the impact it's having. I've just finished reading this great book, which actually I'm going to do a piece about and recommend in the Vibrant community, and it's called Lost Connections, and it's quite a long book, but it is one man's journey of discovery around depression. And this is somebody who was depressed for most of his young life, from late teens all through his 20s, taking antidepressants for 13 years, and then begins to wonder, as each increase in dose of antidepressant eventually wears off and he finds himself very depressed again, what is going on here. And the book is his journey of discovery, and it's really well researched. Now, if you read it, Fiona, I don't think you're going to read anything that you don't know in spades already. And I was delighted, because I was kind of nervous for a while, without giving away the punchline, that he wasn't going to get to the conclusion that the answer is inside out. Innocently, it's not a conscious choice to be unhappy. It's not, and not that unhappiness and depression are the same thing, but it's part of the road towards. It's not a conscious choice. But I had worried for a while that he was going to blame all depression on all external factors, and he didn't. But what's really interesting is that I had no idea that there was a time there where doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists didn't think that external factors had anything to do with mental illness at all. And I was incredulous. I was like, well, of course it has. That's common sense. And now, of course, it is realized that is true. But if it was true 100% that it's always the external factors, then, for example, everybody who lived in poor housing would be depressed all of the time. Now, there is a much higher propensity, of course there is, but it's not true for everybody. So what makes the difference? And what was really interesting is, as I say, I recommend it to read, not just if you are interested in mental health or mental illness and depression specifically, but just life in general in the 21st century. And of course, one of the causes of depression is bandied around a lot, and you can absolutely see why, is social media, because it fuels comparison, it fuels bullying, unfortunately. It fuels an awful lot of trolling and just nastiness and hatred. And And you can absolutely see why that would get somebody down. And I did get to a point myself a few years ago where I thought, oh, I just can't look. I can't look at the news, and I cannot look at social media. I just can't. It's too toxic. But having this inside out understanding, yeah, I can look at anything. I can look at anything, and it's not that I've cut myself off and done, I think, what's generally called an emotional bypass. I'm more in touch with my emotions than I ever have been in my whole life, and I'm not hijacked by them actually as well. But it's that I see what's going on. I see it for what it is, and I don't take it personally, and I don't take it to heart. And if anything, I feel compassion for the pain that people must be in, for their state of mind to be such that that's how they are being moved to behave, that those are the thoughts that they're having, that that is how they feel the need to treat other people. And I don't know whether that makes sense to you. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So one point is, unfortunately, there are still mental health professionals that you mentioned that still think that depression is only a chemical imbalance in the brain. Unfortunately, there still is. There's spades of them, actually. You could probably even divide it in half. And that's why they're chucking Prozac and other sweets at people. You know, the number one cause for the relapse into depression is renumeration, telling yourself the same stuff again and again and again, and just repeating it, just going on the brain loop, you know, because the brain actually works by telling you stories. This is science, you know. So the main job of the unconscious brain is to remember absolutely everything that ever happened to you. Why? Because it only has one job, and that job is to keep you safe. So that's the job of the unconscious mind mainly. And of course, the conscious mind does whatever the unconscious mind tells it to do. It's not the other way around. That's why affirmations don't work, but that's another subject for another time. So the unconscious mind has to remember everything that's ever happened to you. You know, and as you get older, you know, it's hard, isn't it, to remember everything. So the brain makes stories. Why? Because stories are shortcuts. So basically what happens is, say somebody had a car accident, and then they get in a car and someone else is driving, and they find themselves on the same road that they had the car accident on. And the brain goes, holy cow, bloody hell, that accident's going to happen again. Come on, you know, and then you get stressed, you start to sweat, your heart starts to pound. If you can bring awareness to that, and you can go, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to be scared. I'm on that road again. That's okay. Body, do your thing. It's okay. Then you're going inside out. You're like, it's okay. You know, I can be aware. I can ride this through. I can just wait for my inner intelligence to show up, because it's gonna, if I don't freak out. However, if you're disposed to depression, and you're used to listening to that rumination thinking, you're totally going to go into the story of the accident, and you're going to relive the accident in that moment. And then you're going to be depressed again, you know. And this could be just a really small car crash. It doesn't have to be a huge one where you got injured. So, you know, the brain telling stories is, the reason why I mentioned that is because the loop in the brain, the renumeration, again, is a real thing. It's a biological process to keep us safe. And so a lot of external threats, they're just perceptions of our mind. They're not really threats. We're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger that's going to eat us. A lot of what we find ourselves in today, it's not life or death situations. It just feels like that in the moment. And actually, sometimes it doesn't even feel like that. The brain just tells you that story, and then the physiology comes on board like it's meant to, and gets ready to run away or fight or panic or do whatever it thinks is the best thing to do at the time. And I mean that the body every 70 trillion cells in your body think. They're an intelligence of their own. They think. I believe the unconscious mind is not located anywhere specific. It's in every single cell in our body, and it's around that. It's the energy around it. And again, that's why working with your energy is really important, because the unconscious mind is metaphorical. It's symbolic. And working with energy is the same way. So energy is the quickest way to get into your unconscious mind and change the programming. So I totally agree with what you say. You know, the way we end depression is by the inside out understanding. Where my awareness is and where my perception is what's creating my experience. Prompt, a Portuguese word. There's nothing else needed. That's all that's needed to know. However, people can know that intellectually, that can make sense intellectually, but if they've not got a way, a method of truly connecting with themselves, of truly being able to understand the role of feelings and the role of emotions, which are two separate things, they're not the same thing, and they can stop going with the story of the emotion in their mind and literally get in their body and be with it. It takes 90 seconds for any emotion to intensify in the body and leave and be gone. And then you're back online, you're back with your innate intelligence, your inner wisdom, and you're capable of creating a new experience. And that's why I said earlier that we can be the change we want to see in the world very quickly.
I love that. You know, one of the things that occurs to me is that we talk, don't we, about how we know that little children who have had books read to them, have a much wider vocabulary. And one of the things we don't talk about is that, yeah, of course they do, because they are being exposed to a wider vocabulary, and it goes into our knowing, and most of it goes into our unconscious mind. Because when we go to speak, I'm speaking to you now, I'm choosing the words of what I want to convey, but the words are coming from my repertoire of words that I have available to me. That's what I've learned. Well, everything else works in the same way. And because we've got a media that forever, you can do it. I mean, I've been doing it recently just because, as it's been relevant to some of the work that I've been doing. Have a look at the number of negative stories in the news each morning versus the number of positive stories. So there's this massive negative bias, which, as you've said, our unconscious mind is designed to keep us safe. So the more threats and dangers we expose our unconscious mind to, just like when we're little and our parents are reading to us and they're exposing us to more and more vocabulary, it's all going in. That's what we're doing to our brains, or our consciousness. To be clear, we are exposing our awareness to all of these threats, and they all go in there. And then when we go, how are we? When I ask someone, how are you? I'm now struck, you know, given what I know and the work that I do, that a lot of people don't realize that they're not their feelings. So when they go, oh, I am this, I mean, we are essentially reinforcing that's who we are. So if I ask someone, how are you, and they say, well, yeah, you know, I'm okay, but yeah, I'm a bit down, things have been a bit tough, we're saying I am, that we're reinforcing in the brain that is who we are. And yet we are not those things. We are consciousness that sits behind it. And you know, I'm really aware we haven't got time to go into that today, but if, to your point exactly, if you're walking around and you're thinking, look, I just want to be happy in my life, you know, and you've essentially said to your brain, and it's doing it anyway, can you think of a way to keep me safe for the rest of my life so that nothing else bad happens to me? It's a very literal pattern making machine. You know, it has been likened to a computer, and it will try and do that. And because it can't reconcile it, it will just keep showing you worrisome thoughts. If your whole attention is on, I need to be safe, I need to be safe, you're coming from a place of fear, and your brain is going to keep showing you things to be fearful of. But if you believe, if that commentary. So, some people will sit in pictures, some people may hear it in words, like a narrative running through their mind. Some people will feel it, and most of us will be a combination of all of those things. And that how we are story, and it looks true to us in relation to who we think we are, the ego, then that is the story that we have on a loop. And I know from my own experience, it had not occurred to me that the how I am, because of everything that's happened, everything that's been going on, is a story created by my brain, and it doesn't have to be true. It may have been, like, elements of that all happened for sure, but they're not happening now. And breaking free and now being suspicious of anything that narrative tells me allows you to live in just a place of so much more calm and grounding and in touch with my energy. And so I love what you're saying, and I think, from my experience of you, Fiona, you've got a great way of helping people break out of that narrative.
Yeah, there's just so much you said that I'd like to reply to. So, up to the age of 7, we are literally sponges. We are literally soaking in all of the information from around us, particularly from our main caregivers, our mum and dad, or, if we brought up in the care system, the managers of the home. And we literally just soaking all that in. And that's the narrative that we then live from for the rest of our life. And we're making decisions about that. I'm brilliant, look at me, or I've got to stay hidden, the world's too scary, or money comes to me easily, or wow, I really need to hold on to this money because it's going to be gone very soon, and loads of other stories that we tell ourselves. And they're so built into our unconscious mind that we don't even know that that's our belief system. And the great thing about being able to read energy is, as you've experienced with me, Sarah, is that I see it. I'm like, oh yeah, you have a belief system of this. And he was like, no. And I'm like, well, close your eyes and ask yourself. And then you're like, yep, I do, and then just that insight, and sometimes just seeing it, just being aware of it and going, well, that's a silly idea. That can be enough to let it go. Or maybe, we need to do some energy work around it, and then some emotional work, and, higher intuition work around it, belief system recreation. But the point is just like you said, it's not just like, I'm going to paraphrase. There are no techniques. There's awareness. There's tapping into the real consciousness, your real innate intelligence that you are, and opening up to that. And then it doesn't really matter. If someone's like, oh, I'm okay, but blah, blah, you're right. That's a story that they're telling themselves. And that story is an emotional-based story. And emotions are stories created by the mind to give you an idea of what's so-called happening. But once it's turned into an emotion, the so-called happening is so cool because it's just happening up here. It's not the reality of what is. Well, when you're actually in your body, grounded, and you're feeling is in present moment now, and that is also giving you information, but that's real information that's important. If you're about to walk down a dark alley with somebody that you've just met at a party, and suddenly your feeling is, I can't trust this person, turn around and walk the other way. Listen to that. That's your innate intelligence coming through you, telling you. But if you're suddenly like, oh, I don't like this person because he reminds me of blah, 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 then that's probably an emotional story. But in that example, still turn around and walk the other way. Really, my message to the world seems to be, you're not a victim. You're not a victim of anything that's ever happened to you, or anything that you perceive might be happening right now. Because as soon as you learn how to get into your body, connect with your innate intelligence, connect with your innate health, your inner wisdom, God, whatever you want to call it, then everything just opens up. And that is a feeling, you know, when we're in our stories, we're contracted, we can feel the tension, we can feel our shoulders up, you know, we can feel that our heart's closed. We feel a little bit unbalanced, we feel a little bit dizzy. There's loads of feelings that tell you that you're not connected to you. When you're connected to you, you feel okay, at least, or, you know, most of the time people feel more spacious. They literally feel that they've got more space. They literally feel the unwinding of their body. And suddenly there's a smile that comes on their face that might not have happened in a long time, you know, and it's just really tapping into who you truly are, which I can help you do very quickly. Just opens up possibilities into your life that you wouldn't have imagined before.
Mm.
You're never a victim.
No, and it is that that relief from carrying around a whole load of stuff. I mean, we joke, don't we, about having baggage, but it is literally like that. When we're worrying about something, it's like carrying around this heavy load, and it seems that the almost very often the older we get, the more baggage we have, because we collect experiences along the way. And also what I notice is that whilst we always have the capacity for fresh thought, for to tap into the source of original thinking, always, because of the way our brain works, which is trying to keep us safe and looking for hypotheses. Really, it has a hypothesis about eventually, through experience, the best way to keep us safe, and then that's what it will see, because it is a pattern making machine. It will look for evidence of that, and we gather more and more of it. And so people live into almost smaller and smaller and smaller definitions of what's possible, you know, because they've got so much experience of, well, this happened to this person, this happened to me, and I saw that happen, and I heard about this in the news. And it begins to shape the walls of their life about, well, I think that this is possible, but that would be impossible. And then you get people using language like, well, be real, be realistic. There's always an opportunity for something that's not realistic, but for our thinking that there isn't. And you know, what I find fascinating about this conversation is that this is so relevant to business. Of course it is, because businesses are corporations. It's a body of people. Without people, businesses wouldn't exist. And because this is how people work, this is how businesses work. And when in fact I was reading a case study ready for some work I'm doing for a client next week yesterday, because here's a client that has had really fast growth, and it's that classic stagnation. You know, the growth has slowed down and they don't seem to be going anywhere, and they can't see why. And whilst I wouldn't necessarily put it in these terms, when I talked to them all, I thought, yeah, I can see exactly why. And I can even relate to it from my own business, which is that you're all hauling so much baggage around unconsciously that when you say to each other about new ideas, everyone goes, well, that's not realistic, or that won't work, or we've tried that before, because they've kind of funneled down into what's possible. But guess what? You know, a disruptor will come along from outside and it won't see any of those walls. It won't accept any of those givens as givens. And that is how all these disruptors keep coming along and blowing, you know, big businesses literally out of the water, because the things that look true and real and must be maintained forever in an established business, no, a disruptor coming along doesn't see that. They see the opportunity to go around it. But that is what we're doing with individuals as well. When they say, this is how my life is, you know, I'm a victim of it, I'm stuck. You know, I saw a lady last week who she said, you know, I'm in my 50s, I'm a professional, I'm in my 50s, and I work in a very male dominated world, and I'm invisible, and I need the other people around me, who are mainly men, to change their perception towards women so I'm no longer invisible. And with the greatest love, you know, I said to her, and now see, No, you can't change anybody else's behavior. You can only change people's behavior with changing your energy. And they think you're invisible because you think you are. And what we need to do is to stop you thinking that you're invisible, and then they won't think you're invisible.
Yeah. And I guess what you mean by stop her thinking that she's invisible is not by actually changing her thoughts, but by actually working with her understanding of who she really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because the idea that she's invisible is coming from her thinking.
yeah, absolutely. But it's also probably coming from her story of that's the way she had to be as a child, because as I said, the brain's a story mechanism, so it's going to look for evidence to keep supporting its story, and that's what we do, and that's why awareness is so important. Because if we believe that we're a victim, but we don't know that consciously, but we're operating from that program unconsciously, then everything that happens to us is just you know, supporting that belief. And it's only when we bring awareness to it that we're like, oh yeah, and then with awareness becomes choice. And probably we have to work with the unconscious mind, and we also have to work with the energy which works with the unconscious mind. But as soon as they see through all of that, that's it. Then there's an opportunity for something else to come in that's different.
Yeah.
And that's what's huge. And I'd love to see that in people. I love to see the moment they're just like, wow, I'm really telling myself that. And again, you've experienced it working with the energy and getting you to like tap into your own energy. You don't have to think through your stories. You can just go in and it's like yes or no. Yeah, okay, that's there. And then it's much quicker, isn't it, Sarah? Because
It is really quick. And even though I had learned to become really suspicious of anything I think, which because I know it's coming from a story, it doesn't mean to say that you just can't be aware of everything that's in you. But what I do know is if I'm frustrated by something out there, the answer isn't to get frustrated with what's out there and go, what you need to change. The answer is to come in here. And that's why I see so much potential in this work, because or for example, I do a lot of work, I have done over the years, with trying to support women to have more parity and equity, particularly in business, because that's where I come from and that's what I know, and I'm a woman. And I
I
kind of,
love that. I'm a woman.
and I'm a woman, I think I am. But I went away from it for a few years, and I couldn't really work out why. Um, like it energetically, it just felt like oof to me in the end, and I couldn't work out why. And now I have a much clearer idea for why, and it was really around the fact that um, I didn't understand what I was feeling at the time, but essentially I was sitting in rooms of mainly women, and innocently and understandably, by the way, I'm not being judgmental about this, but going, we need the world to change in order for us to have equality and parity of pay, etc. I'm not disputing that that's true. But that what we need to happen is that here's a world that is of business that is predominantly for men because it's been built by men, and we need them to change it so that we can be okay. But men are behaving in the same way, so not in any way to excuse the bad behaviors and the abuse of power and so forth that have gone on, but they're doing what's occurring to them given their unconscious thinking. And so it comes back to, I can only change what's out there by changing how I show up to what's out there. And I know I have enough evidence in my life when I look back to go, oh yeah, of course, that's how it works. That has always been the case. It's true. And so much of our energy and effort is on me trying to persuade you that you're the one that needs to change. And I'm not saying that you don't, if you're a company that, you know, still has got one token female on their board, yeah, you need to change that. But the way we're going to change it is by not this, you know, it's by showing up differently and living into the reality that we want to see, not by fighting in the reality that we've got now, because then we just get sucked into it. And I don't know if any of that makes sense to you, but yeah, that's what I now see as being important.
Yeah, what came up before when you were speaking, and it's come up again, is a lot of things are inner conflict. So if you're feeling like outside has to change, and you know, before I can do anything, then there's going to be a part of you that's saying that's BS. You know, come on, I actually want to do that. Innate health is going to be saying to you, come on, there's more out there. I want to do more. I'm capable. And then the other part of you, the victim part of you, is going to be going, oh yeah, but I can't. And look at all this evidence that proves that I can't. And then that's a huge inner conflict. And then that's all they're seeing on the outside. So men are going to be, see, you're hysterical, you're emotional, you're unbalanced, you're blah, 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 blah. And thank God more men are actually showing their emotions now. And there are men that are calling those more emotional men unbalanced, hysterical, blah, blah, blah. It's, you know, it's a crazy world. But if we get inside of ourselves and become aware of the conflicts and, you know, the different paradigms that are working inside of ourselves, and we become more at ease with that. And so, you know, we got an eye in, we know what we're doing, we're aware of our own being, and our attention is outwards. You know, we want to connect, we want to have true connection with people. Things change then. If you're really present with somebody and you're really connected with them, rather than in your head telling yourself a story, everything looks different. And it looks different instantly, not tomorrow or not next year or not when something external changes. It's people to people. You know, when you get really quiet and you're really interested in what that other person says, he can be a complete idiot, you know, all of the time. But I guarantee if you get really, you want to connect with him, but you're connecting from a deep place inside of you, he's going to get quiet as well. And then that connection can lead to anything. And I see that in my own life all the time, both when I'm working and both in my own personal life.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the tricks you can use is before you go to bed, you can just say to your unconscious mind, okay, you know, this is what appears to be happening right now. Show me more information or give me the answers. Or what I like to say is, what am I not seeing that I'm believing in this right now?
That's a great question.
And then at some point during the night, and at the moment it's happening all the time, I'm waking up somewhere between 3 and 5 a.m. and I'm just like, that's an easy solution. You know, sell your fan, and until you get another car, rent one. Oh yeah, that hadn't even occurred to me yesterday. And it's such an obvious solution, and yet it's going to make some arrangements that I have to do at the moment so much easier. And it's just like, ding, oh yeah, the light bulb moment, you know?
Yeah, I've just had an experience of exactly that. I'm trying to renovate a property, and it's quite challenging, let's put it that way. And there are various obstacles and problems with it, and it was stuck. I mean, it was really well and truly stuck. There was no way forward seemingly at that point. And it got to a couple of weeks ago, and it was so stuck that, because I was really grounded when I was looking at it, I just ended up laughing and thinking, yeah, I mean, at the moment it's cement. Nothing's moving, nothing's going ahead, nobody can do anything. It is just there. And I literally had that moment of going, oh well, You know, I could sit here and I could worry about it, but worrying about it isn't going to get me this situation unstuck. So I really let it go. I thought, I love the expression, if I can't see it now, it just means that I can't see it yet. And I can either spend the time in between being stuck and the next thing happening, worrying about it and actually ruining my quality of life during that time, or I can just drop it because I can't see it and I can go off and do other stuff. And I did that. I kind of like, I said, right, I mean, in my case, I tend to go, right, okay, right brain, it's over to you. I can't see a solution. You know, don't know what to do with it. I'm checking out of this. I'm leaving it to you. And then literally the next day I woke up and I went, oh yeah, I know what to do. And it hadn't even occurred. And so then I said to my husband, this is what we need to do. And he went, yeah, that's it. And then I phoned the architect. I said, this is what we need to do instead. And he said, oh, how did I not think of that? It's such a much better plan. And I was like, well, I didn't think of it. You know, it was there in the depths. It wasn't me. It wasn't the me that's consciously talking to you now. It came from, you know, somewhere else. But that's what we need to do. And before, I can genuinely say I would have wandered around being really frustrated about it, just leaving it. And then a much better solution came up. And I kind of went, oh yeah, and that's why it was stuck as well, because the other plan was not the right one. This is the right one. And then it's kind of all lining up to happen. I was like, oh, there we go.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? And it's also not denying any feeling that might come up around that, because that's the other thing that creates that internal conflict is, and a lot of people misunderstand inside out way. You know, it's like it's all in your thinking. You know, your feelings, emotions got nothing to do with it, and then they're just cutting themselves off from connection to other people, from source. You know, and you're gonna feel things, and if you just keep putting them down, then they're going to become emotion because the body wants to shout louder, so you get the information. And again, that cuts you off from your inner wisdom, that cuts you off from the greater intelligence. So just to acknowledge that, yeah, that feels pretty shit, actually, but I'm not going to worry about it because there's no point, and I trust that I'm going to be back online, back in my innate intelligence pretty soon. So right now, like you say, I'm going to drop it. I'm going to do something else I can do about probably something else. And then bing, the idea comes and you're like, yeah, there's that feeling of openness and excitement. And then you know you're back online, you're with your innate intelligence. But you have to listen to the feeling. You have to be in your body and you have to accept that and not just have a dry intellectual understanding of something that's not embodied, that's not right here, right now, happening in this moment.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I mean, I as you said that, I mean, one of the things that occurred to me is that I started saying to my clients, you know, there's a question that we really got to stop asking with the underlying assumption that it's a good question to ask. You know, the question that routinely gets asked is, what keeps you awake at night? As if it's a responsible behavior of a leader to stay awake at night worrying about something, because worrying about it is going to help you solve it. And you know, we know scientifically that the more you worried you are, to your point earlier, the more aroused you are in your stress response. So actually, the more cortisol you've got flowing through your system, and the less likely, I mean, this is utterly proven time and time and time again, the less likely you are to have a creative idea or think of a solution. So in fact, you know, when I work with companies and they say that question, I was like, stop asking that question and let's look at why it's such a bad idea. And given that we seem to have this idea that sleep deprivation is the norm if you are going to succeed in business or succeed in anything in life, which is just not true. You know, we've got to nip it in the bud. We've got to call out stuff that is really unhelpful and unhealthy. So anyway, that's my little soapbox
Because as soon as you're in the stress response, that means you're in the lower brain.
Yeah.
You're in the reactivation loop. That's not exactly the right word for it, but that loop. And in your higher cortex and your prefrontal lobe is cut off. Why? Because it's in survival. It's got to respond. It's got to react straight away. It's got to react from the unconscious mind. It hasn't got time to think about it because it's going to be eaten. So that's why you can't get you can't get brilliant ideas, because you've got no access to this. And the reason why you can't get creative is because when you're in the stress response, the primitive brain is listening to your emotions. But the interesting thing is, it's not in contact with your body. So it's not in contact with the life force. It's in contact with the story of, I got to get the bloody hell out of here.
Yeah.
So you've got to be in your body to feel the life force, and the life force is creativity. It's what animates you, me, and every living thing on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's pure creative. And how do you know that I'm telling the truth? Look out the window. Look at how beautiful nature is, and how creative and spontaneous it is, and how alive it is. We are that if we're in touch with it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And in fact, it's funny, isn't it? Because thankfully, people are realizing it. And the idea of, for instance, taking people out of businesses and into beautiful natural spaces is gaining some currency again. I mean, thank goodness. It got a bad rap, I think, because a lot of the outward bound stuff that happened in the 80s, 90s.
Team building, you will climb a 7-foot wall.
I mean, I have to say, it's like aside that I did 2 outward bounding things years ago in the 90s with the company that I was with. And I was dreading it and I hated the idea of it. But I had a ball. I loved every second. And it was out in the Brecon Beacons. And part of what made it so fantastic was just being in nature. But, back to the book, Lost Connections, one of the things that is driving definitely an increase in low thinking and in time leads to depression is a disconnection from nature. And the other thing that we see is, I've talked about this for years, like from years and years ago when I actually worked in-house in client companies. I used to kind of say quite cheekily, do you think that companies install a brainwasher above the revolving door as people walk in the morning? Because we get to work and we can forget how to be a human being. And I think it really started to strike me when I was in marketing, and we would talk about what we were going to do to communicate with our customers to hopefully get them to behave in the way that we wanted them to behave. And I used to sit there thinking, but as a real person in the real world, like, that would never work. I wouldn't do that. And I'm pretty sure that most other people wouldn't do that. But again, it's back to neuroscience, because our unconscious mind edits for us. The minute we walk through the door, we are unconsciously conforming to what we perceive are the rules. And it's also cutting down that, what I call the field of vision, so that it gives us just what we need to operate within that confined definition of what life is going to be like now in this building. And so not only does getting people out into nature help them connect with nature, because we're human beings, we're part of it and we need to, but it also automatically releases the confines of that very, very defined thought prison that we are operating from within the minute we walk into what we perceive is our usual workspace. And so thankfully, because my big focus, and I've probably said it in one of these videos before on business, is because most of us spend most of our time at work, and we can do all of the stuff outside of work, which is great. But if we don't change work, then we are going to continue to get sicker and sicker and sicker. We get more and more overwhelmed. I now see that burnout is exactly what you and I have just been talking about, which is that thinking, round in a circle, round in a circle, round in a circle, until that part of your brain can't take it anymore, and you are ill. And you may have mental illness, you may have physical illness, you've probably got both. And that is what's going on, because we innocently think that we have to believe the story, and that we have to continue to worry in order to think our way out of it. And in fact, it's going in exactly the wrong direction. So yeah, I love that you bring the nature piece up, because it's so vital. And I think it's hilarious to have now, very, very senior serious executives sitting in the middle of a wood talking about reconnecting with their human selves. But thank God there is hope that things are going to get better.
Well, when we walk out into nature, what actually happens is the cells in our body recognize the cells in nature as being the same, because they are. And that enables us to completely relax. And again, this is science. It's the science behind biodynamic craniosacral therapy, which is something I'm medically qualified in. And again, that's about presence. When we truly sit with someone present, and we're just really in our presence, we're not thinking, we're not worrying, then their body goes, oh yeah, I can do that. It just mirrors the cells of the therapist's body, and it enters a deeper state of relaxation, which is called mid-tide, which is the state of the brain waves in meditation. Now, when we go out to nature, we go to the biorhythm that's called long tide, which is where the body can completely make itself new again. So the body literally makes itself new every 7 years, but in long tide, it can happen straight away. And how do I know this? Because I've experienced it again and again and again with clients, with other people. And it's one of the reasons why I chose to live in Portugal in such beautiful nature. And I bring people from all over the world here. And, I put them up in amazing villas with swimming pools and stuff like that, because, their brain thinks they want that. But we spend so little time there. We spend most of our time in the forest or on the beach or up a mountain. And they just love it. And they can't believe how different they feel. And even though we have some really serious, hard conversations, we're having them while we're chilling out on the beach. Or, it's back to the football scenario with the young people that I worked with in the psychiatric unit. Let's just relax and be at ease. And then we can access the deeper, harder stuff that we're telling ourselves. And I had an insight about burnout the other day, and just really, most of the time, things aren't going right in people's lives because they've lost hope, and they don't even realize they've lost hope. And hope sounds like this thing. To put it another way, they truly believe at a part of their being that it's not going to work. Whatever it is that they're doing, it's not going to work. And yet they will not, by any means, allow themselves to consciously acknowledge that fact that they believe that it's not going to work. Yeah, that is sabotaging everything they're doing. And then in my case, I burnt out of my first job in the psychiatric unit. I hit a tree with my car, coming out of the hospital on the big driveways, showing my age now, because psychiatric units used to be in big public parks and private parks, sorry. So you'd come down the driveway and I hit ice and my car just skidded and went into a tree. Lucky enough, I wasn't going that fast. I'd only just learned how to drive and I wrote off my first car. My partner's well happy with me. But at that point, my higher wisdom come on board and it's just like, you have to leave. That's it. I've had enough. I've been trying to tell you, you're not listening. Now you're going to do something about it. And I did.
Yeah.
I became a therapist.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I mean, I kept overriding that part of me that knew until I got ill and I couldn't carry on doing it anymore. And I was thinking, so what you said really made me remember that we have this little cottage in by the sea in Dorset, and I've written about it, I've talked about it on the community. Like when I go there, there is so much space, and it's very elemental. You know, there's the sea is amazing, 17 miles of beach, and then behind us the Dorset Ridge, so rolling hills, and it is the place where I get to, and I just sort of go and I do some coaching down there, because same as you, I know, and you can walk along the Southwest Coastal Path. I know if I can get people to come there, I can definitely help them get to where they want to go. So it's not about where I want them to go, it's about where they want to go. I would say, no exaggeration, 10 times faster than if we stay in London. There's no comparison. But anyway, what I was thinking was an open invitation. You know, when you're over in the UK, you have to come to Dorset and maybe do some energy work down there. It would be lovely to host you and see what happens in that space.
Yeah, I'm there. Me and my dog, Sal, we'll be there for sure.
Yeah, we're very dog friendly too. Yeah, most definitely. Well, and one of my dogs isn't very dog friendly, but that's a whole other story. You might need to do some energy work on him.
Yeah, they work it out. They always work it out.
Oh, well, I hope that people have enjoyed listening to this conversation and hearing your wisdom as much as I always do. And I am going to ask you, where can they find you? And what I always do is type it in the comments underneath when I post the film, so that what happens is this will go into the unit in the Vibrant community, which is called Vibrant Voices, and people can go back and watch those films at their leisure. And you may find that some people watch it straight away, and some people might not watch it for 6 months, a year down the line. But it's interesting how questions trickle in over time. So yes, where can people find out more about you?
So my website is Real Energy, the number 4 as a number, all.com. Realenergyforall.com.
Brilliant.
So that's the best thing. It's got all the contact details on there. Something I'd like to ask you, Sarah, and I don't know if you'd like to do this or not, but would you like to share with people what's the main one thing or 3 things that you gained from working with me?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that I gained from you, which is I had become really aware of how I felt in any given situation. So that had happened over a number of years, actually. And I mean, I think as a child we're always aware, and as an adult we somehow get disconnected from sensations in our body and that deeper knowing. And although my intuition most of my life was fairly reliable, there was stuff going on for me physically that I couldn't make any sense of. And so for me, the one thing was, despite getting to this point of knowing that it's all inside out, and despite knowing it, you know, it is my thinking, there was still something stuck. And when I sat in introspection, if you like, I could still feel something, but I couldn't make any sense of it. So the best I can describe is a tightness in my solar plexus, and I knew it was there, and I tried all sorts of things to try and free it, because I had the sense that it was wanting to be freed. It would be beneficial for me to be freed. And I wasn't up in my head about it. It wasn't that I was stressing. But then you and I had a chat, because I was really intrigued. And as I said, because I was desperate to know, like, when you say you see energy, what do you see? And we had that conversation, and you were able to see that energy without me even telling you it was there. And I thought, okay, she knows what she's talking about. And then to free it, which we did, you know, without a story. Like, I don't know why it was there. I can have theories, but all I do know is it's gone. And that's another part of the baggage that I'd been hauling around, gone. Thanks very much. I feel much lighter. And I think it's got to do with being able to, like you said, when you show up to people and you're 100% present for them, that just felt like it might be a little bit in the way. and now it's not there.
Hmm.
So
And
thank you.
you're trusting and listening to your intuition a lot more as well.
Yeah, 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 I am. I am, and I think that's how I can be of service to others. It's ironic. I will say this as my final parting shot. Years ago, long, convoluted story, as these things often are, but I'll shortcut to saying I found myself, along with some colleagues, doing some work on influencing skills and selling skills, which wasn't really our core business, but anyway, that's what I was doing. And in the process of that, we would teach people various techniques. And one of them was higher listening. We would talk about the 7 levels of listening. And it just has made me laugh ever since, that I had no idea what I was talking about. Like, I thought I did at the time. So it was innocent. I wasn't trying to hoodwink anybody. It's like, yes, it looks true for me that here's this pyramid and there are 7 levels of listening, and the top one is the most transformational listening. And I could intellectually describe it, but I had no idea really what it was, because you don't know what you don't know. Like, you can't hear notes that dogs can hear. It was kind of like that, until I realized, oh, what that is being able to sit and listen to somebody with your full attention on them. So there's no story running in your head, and there's no judgment going on of anything that person says. It's just being there. That is the 7th level of listening. And what I found is that very often the only thing I need to do is to sit with somebody from that place, and I don't need to say anything, and they connect to their own deeper intuition. And I don't know what it was energetically that was stuck, but it was something. And I think removing that has brought even in a heightened level of clarity, and of not just clarity but openness to that listening.
Yeah, and that's what I see a lot of people are not doing, then, which I'm doing, is they're not really teaching people what that feels like.
Yes.
Because once you know what it feels like, you can trust that you're there, and then that enables you to deepen even more into it and become even more present, which creates so much difference in your own life and the other people you're listening to. So it doesn't matter if you're a coach or a therapist or a business leader, it just makes a huge difference in your relationships with people. And that's what we all want. We want to be who we are. We want to be truly connected to people. We want to belong. And we just want to feel fulfilled and happy in our lives. And we're social beings. So that connection is just so important.
Yeah, that is it. There's nothing in the way of that connection. And I mean, imagine if we could teach, because we can, but we don't. Imagine if we could teach doctors to be that with patients.
Well, I've been trying, and I keep knocking on the NHS's door, and one day it will open.
Yeah, it will. I think it will. I mean, personally, I think those people who genuinely had a vocation were always coming from that place. I think nurses are a very good example. But if you've gone into a career because of an intellectual connection, then that connection is not necessarily there. And in today's hurried world, it seems like there's less time. But I think people are realizing, yeah, but we can't keep sustaining this 24/7, overcrowded, over noisy. What's the answer? I'm not saying this is the answer, but it's definitely one of the key pieces of the jigsaw. So it's been so lovely to talk to you this morning, Fiona. Thank you very much. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again soon, and I hope people will pose any questions that they have in the comment section, or as usual, if you don't want to do that, message me, message Fiona, and we will come back to you. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you so much.